I was gonna say, yeah, it's a novelty for me because I only got married just under a year ago, so I haven't had a lifetime of trauma of people mispronouncing it. But at the event in Brisbane, like the guys kind of know me, but I traveled, so they're
Mhm.
like, and in second place, Josh. I'm not even gonna try pronouncing your last name from Adelaide. It's
Nice.
quite funny.
It's like it doesn't look like it's that bad. I mean, come on, Dineeth Liana Gama was there. His name is
Yeah,
like
exactly, right?
this long.
They
All
had a
right.
bounty on him, and it's like Liana Gamana Mana 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 Mana.
Welcome everybody to another Noob Hammer interview. This time I'm here with Josh Engelke, who just finished second place with Grey Knights at the Normal Blokes 2021 GT in Australia. Um, this is kind of a sister interview to the one that I would have just posted. It's actually in editing right now with Dineeth Lianagama, who took 8th place at that same event with Deathwatch. He actually faced off against Josh. He was beaten soundly, I heard, and it was his only loss of the event. So I love both of those armies. Josh actually responded to me in the middle of my interview with Dineeth agreeing to do this interview. So thank you so much, Josh,
Thank you for having me.
and thanks for
It
staying
was
up late because it's 6:30 a.m.
11
here,
p.m.
11 p.m. Yeah, so you're gonna be up till at least like 1:30 in the morning probably. Because
That's all right. That's fine.
excellent. So, let's just jump right in. How about that? Josh, why don't you tell me a little bit about you, how long you've been playing, and why you decided to take Grey Knights to this event, and then we'll jump into the list after that.
Yeah, so I've been playing about three, is it three? Maybe it's 4 years competitively now. I played as a teenager. I think, lots of us play as teenagers and then sort of fall out of the hobby. I had a friend that I played with who moved away, and I just stopped playing when I started high school. And then, yeah, one of my other friends, he worked on a cruise ship, and so when he came home from working on a cruise ship, he was like, "I used to play this game called Warhammer. Do you want to come around? I'm going to have some friends around. And we're going to have like a little one-day tournament." And he was playing Warhammer Fantasy, and so I went to that, and we had like a little 3 games in one day type thing with 8 people, and I won that. And it really got the old mojo back, and I was like, I need to buy myself some Tyranids again. So
You
um, yeah,
you got
just
that
flexing.
that
Yeah.
like no. Well, I was making a reference to you got a little juice in you, and it
Yeah,
made you want to play again.
yeah, definitely. So that was early 8th edition. So I went on Gumtree, which I don't know if is that an international thing or is that just an Australian? It's like
It
eBay but local.
sounds Oh yeah. Well, I used to work for eBay, so
Oh,
that's probably where I've heard Gumtree before.
yeah, saying it out loud, it sounds Australian. I think Craigslist is
Okay.
something that
Yeah, Craigslist is
something.
definitely ubiquitous here.
Yeah, so I think it's similar to Craigslist.
Gotcha.
Um, anyway, yeah, I went on there and I picked up a Tyranid army and I got into it and I just haven't looked back. So yeah.
Fantastic. And that's so why Grey Knights at this event? If you love your bugs so much.
So I've had I think like most people in the hobby, I've had a bit of a journey through lots of armies. So I started with Tyranids and I also had Tau. So when I was playing as a kid, Tau just came out. So I bought some Tau as my second army as a kid and then again as an adult. But I hated Tau. So I sold that. That was just uninteractive. And then I bought, what was my next army? Custodes. And again, Tyranids are so active, like they move really far, they've got psychic, they've got shooting, they've got assault, and I really like those dynamic style armies. And I found Custodes a bit bland. So yeah, anyway, I've gone through a few armies, I guess is long and short of it. And Grey Knights, I bought at the end of 8th edition when they got their Psychic Awakening, because it seemed like a really unique playstyle, with the Paladin bombs. And I did one event with them, with 8th, and I went undefeated at an RTT, and I was really happy with them. And then the edition changed.
Yeah.
And they were going to be my first army in Ninth. Like, I just bought them. I was excited about them. But with the rules changes, and especially the Lookout Sir changes, I felt like really confused about how to utilize them in the new edition, because I felt like I had these Paladin units, and then I would charge things because I like charging. That's my favorite part of the game.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, my characters were just behind getting shot, and it was like really hard for me to work out how to play that at the start of the edition. So I moved away from Grey Knights again. And I was always thinking I'd come back to them when I'd figured or gotten a better handle on Ninth. And then Abhor the Witch obviously has been,
Yeah.
a big hamstring.
I got a whole tirade I can go on if you want me to about Abhor the Witch, but please continue.
And then I'm also a TO of one of the largest events in Australia. So I think it is the largest event now. Well, no, that's not true. WA have some big events, but it's called Uprising Adelaide. So we had our first year in January this year. And we've taken over sort of the mantle of CanCon as the LVO style event for Australia.
Very cool.
So at that event this year in January, Stuart Traynor came third with the Grey Knights list, which was really cool at the time. So I tried Grey Knights again after that event with his list, just having a bit of a fiddle, see what I could do. And I had some moderate success with it, but
that was
ended up sort of going.
Yeah, Dineeth mentioned this in the last interview as well. He went third at a major with the 8th edition Grey Knights, which to me,
yeah, that's right,
seems. I mean, that guy has to be at the top of his game, because that is it'd be like hearing GSC came in third or something. Like, what? Where did that come from?
Oh, I'm excited. GSC getting a codex soon. I love GSC.
Yeah, with all the Warzone Charadon like previews and stuff, I think Nids or Guard are coming up real soon, because like, why have these Warzone books that the armies that are currently featured in it aren't active, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if they've switched, because it seems like they have previewed that it's going to be Custodes versus GSC as the box set.
So I meant Warzone Octavius or whatever,
yes.
not Charadon, because Charadon was the chaos stuff. Yeah, I meant anyway.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, in the Octavius previews that we've seen, or Octarius, man, I'm gonna get roasted in the comments. Anyway, there is a preview of, Imperial Guard and Nids smashing in like a massive fight, but then in the back corner is like a little Deathwatch. Like, I think it's like 2 kill teams back there. So there's a lot of speculation as to whether those two.
Isn't it Black Templars? Isn't it Black Templars? Aren't they getting some love?
Oh, they are. Yeah, they're gonna get They're getting model releases right now, and their codex is going to be out soon. They've had some big releases on Warhammer community over the last few days. So anyway, that's beside the point.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Like I said, these are pretty much just a conversation. I urge anybody listening, if you get to a spot that's like not your jam, I put the chapter notes in the description, and you can jump all around and listen to whatever, or you can listen to the whole thing. So yeah. All right, so you're playing Grey Knights. They took third at a major with the 8th edition codex, and that resparked your interest, and you decided to try them out again once the 9th book hit, I assume.
Yeah, that's right. So I had been playing Tyranids and doing really well with them. I'm actually the second ranked Tyranid player in the world at the moment, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
in the
Cheers.
ITC, which is awesome.
Well, cheers.
Yeah, but Makin and Drukhari's releases really reduced the viability of Dharma Karens, which were a linchpin unit for the Tyranids. So I was getting very frustrated with Tyranids. My best friend was playing Drukhari and just smashing me. So I ended up getting a cheap Drukhari army and then feeling like a sellout for playing Drukhari. And so the four armies I own at the moment are Tyranids, Genestealer Cult, Harlequins, and Grey Knights. So none of them have had a codex yet. So this is my first army that I actually own with a codex, other than Drukhari, which I feel like I just bought into to chase the meta a little bit.
Sure.
So when Grey Knights got the book, I was like, I don't want to play Drukhari. I feel a bit dirty playing it. I want to see if I can do something with Grey Knights. And yeah, that's landed me here. And then I put together a list and was pretty amazed at how well it performed on the tables at this event.
I mean, second place at this GT. I want to reiterate for my viewers that, like, some of the best players in Australia went to this GT.
Yeah.
Like, you got Liam Hackett there, Eric, is it Lathoris?
Lathoris?
Yeah, he, like, Dan Savage, you got, I mean, just, like, amazing players there who are known worldwide even. So the fact that you came in second place is high praise, sir. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you. I should caveat it. So interestingly, at this event and in Brisbane event, so this is something we didn't realize when we traveled up there because we didn't read the player pack properly. So once you the final round, they sort of bracket it so that I was playing to win the tournament and lost. But instead of me then dropping places, they keep me at second spot. So if it was a traditional style event, I would have finished sixth, I believe.
Okay.
Based on battle points with my 4-on-1.
Still, that is, I mean, again, the competition was thick and strong. So sixth at a place like that is still great. And
I did have the highest strength of schedule at the event. So all 5 people I played finished in the top 20. So that's
wow. Okay.
A good indicator.
Yeah. Rock on. Well, let's get into that list then, huh? If you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I've got it up.
Do you want me to go through it, or would you like to go through it, or how are we doing this?
You know what? I usually go through it. I've got it up on my screen for my viewers right now. I know you can't see it, but let's just start at the top, and I'd love it if you'd like to just go on down. That'd be fantastic. And then I'll just ask questions as they pop up.
Oh, I don't have it in order. I'd just be doing it from memory. So if you've already got it up, maybe you run through it. Sorry.
So I'll do a quick run through of everything, and then we'll go into more detail. All right. So you have 2 patrols, 1 sword bearers, and then 1 rapiers. So pretty standard what we're seeing in the meta right now. Sometimes folks are running Blades of Victory right now and not rapiers. But otherwise, like, this is pretty standard. In your sword bearers patrol, you have a Tech Marine, a Grandmaster, Nemesis Dread Knight with the Great Hammer, which I assume is just because you were a little shy on points. You have a strike squad, 2 Dread Knights with the standard loadout we're always seeing with the silencer and the Psy cannon and the 2 great swords. Then in your rapiers patrol, we have a librarian, not the mortal wounds fishing crazy ass one. And we have another Grandmaster. This time it's your warlord. So he has first in to the fray, and Servant of the Throne, the Sigil of Exigence, It looks like you didn't buy another warlord trait? Or am I...
No, he was the Tech Marine was my actual warlord. He was just the
Oh yeah, look at
CP
that.
warlord.
It's even right there. Okay,
I was
so
like, ooh, I've been playing that wrong all weekend. That's not what I meant to do.
no. So you have Unyielding Anvil and the Etheric Conduit and Foretelling of Locus on the Tech Marine, who, like you said, is your actual warlord. And then this Grand Master here, he has the 3-up invul, one phase with the Servant
It's
of
one
the
turn,
Throne.
not one phase.
It is one turn. Oh, I thought it
Yeah,
was one
so
phase.
no, it's until the end of the turn. So if
Beautiful.
you are getting shot and assaulted, it works for
Yeah,
both, which is
that would
lovely.
have that would have changed some. I mean, I still won the game against my White Scars friend last weekend, but that would have actually kept my warlord alive through the melee phase. So, whoops. Um, it was a pretty sound pummeling though, so I don't feel too bad. Um,
That happens.
Yeah. Okay. And then you've got the Sigil of Exigence, which I want to talk to you about because as not yet, but as a new player, I can see how that is super useful, and then I think that I always misuse it. So I'd love to go into specifics there. You have 3 strike squads, 1 with swords, 2 with halberds. You have 2 10-man interceptors squads, which I'm assuming you probably combat squad in most games, all with halberds, and then finishing out the whole list is 1 rhino, 1 bare bones 80-point boring rhino. You had sanctuary in the list, I'm sure, somewhere.
Yeah, on the librarian. The librarian had sanctuary and gate.
There he is. Yep, you got it. So let's get into it then. From your memory, how did you come up with this list, and what were the strengths you were trying to really focus on?
So I did a pretty quick testing phase to try and get ready for this event. So I started off by just making a single battalion with the models. So it's basically the same list, but with a single battalion. So I had triple Dread Knight and only 1 Grandmaster. And I had some like extra points. So I had purifiers instead of a couple of strikes and, this and that. And not a hammer. And it was a good list, but then I thought I should try the sword bearers because the +1 to wound seems powerful, obviously. But I was hesitant to give up the CP for a warp charge 7 power that didn't seem very reliable. But then I put it on the table, and oh my god, the +1 to wound is sensational.
Yeah,
Um,
it's worth the
and I
1 CP to make sure
oh
that with for 3d6 cast, because it's so good.
yeah. So yeah, it's amazing. So and it was really helpful all weekend. Um, so yeah, once I tried it, I was like, okay, this is the juice. So it's worth the points. The Tech Marine was a late-ish addition to the list. Once I realized I was using 4 Dread Knights, I was like, what can I do to make these guys better? And honestly, the Tech Marine was great. One thing I worried a bit about in the list concept was that I have the foretelling of Locust to redeploy 3 units.
Yeah,
And sadly, having 2 Grandmasters and 2 Dread Knights means I can only redeploy 2 of the 2 Dread Knights, not the 2 Grandmasters.
right.
So
It's core only.
I was coring, correct. And that also means I can't redeploy the Tech Marine. And the thing that I worried about was that it was a bit of a non-bow, that I might have to redeploy my Dread Knights away from the Tech Marine based on what my opponent had done. But fortunately, I was able to mitigate that, and it didn't really come up over the weekend. So I think the Tech Marine is definitely an important part of the list that will stay in there.
So,
When
oh, I'm a newer player. I love this foretelling of Locust thing because I can deploy really cheeky. And if I know I'm gonna go first, I do something like I can redeploy all of my interceptors like right up on the line because they are core. So even though you maybe can't move just the Dread Knights, you can still move your interceptors, and they are such a threat now that your opponent can't ignore them. So
interceptors are a great threat unit. I feel like, and I would often, like you said, I would often combat squad my interceptors, and have 2x5 in a rhino, and then maybe 5 on the board and 5 in deep strike. And they were typically the third unit that I redeployed. But having said that, I don't feel like interceptors are very good first turn units most of the time, just because like they've got a great movement, but you normally start 24 inches away from somebody. One interesting use I had thought of for the interceptors was my round 4 matchup, which was like the Sunday morning. So we had all night to think about it, was against Orc buggy list that was very heavy in vehicles. So there was like 12 buggies.
Speedwagh.
Yeah, a Speedwagh.
Yeah.
So one thing I thought about
too.
Yeah, two Dakar jets and 12 buggies.
Okay.
One thing I thought about doing if I went first was to potentially move the interceptors up 12, use the psychic power to shoot, and then move another 12 and block him in his deployment zone. So that's a cheeky use. I mean, it's an inexpensive screen, but it would have been quite effective, I think. But it didn't come up I did go first, but I didn't want to do that with his deployment, etc.
That is, that is just something I would have never thought about doing.
Because the buggies don't fly, right? So if you can keep them in the deployment zone, they're similar to us, right? With the 4 Dread Knights, you can get a little bit movement can get tricky. So yeah, making that movement extra hard, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really like how it's such a like troll play too. I love it. It's like, nah, you're gonna stay right there for at least one turn. Like you have to actually kill these guys and not focus on my really good anti-vehicle firepower, which is gonna come from all the Dread Knights.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's
and especially
really
like
cheeky.
you can be in the tide of convergence to have the extra 6-inch range, so then I could outrange the scrap jets as well. So it would have been a cool play if it came up, but it didn't. But that's Tyranids 101. Like double moving things to block people in is how you play Tyranids all the time. So.
Oh, I see. So you're just like, yeah, I got this. Oh yeah, what's the psychic power they have? It's not cat.
It's with the Swarm Lord. The Swarm Lord lets a move a unit in the psychic phase. In the shooting phase. And they can move double their advance and then move again. So a Hormigaunt unit can move like 40 inches? No, is that right?
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. Yeah, just 40.
Just 40?
Yeah.
And you know who's still faster? Guard with move. Fastest unit in the game. All right, so what else? So you were building this, you were trying to go with a battalion that wasn't working out. You found out that empiric amplification is in fact the bee's knees.
Yes. Well, empiric amplification that's the +1 damage. I can't remember what the name of the
oh my gosh, you're right. It's oh no. And
Doesn't matter.
My books are in the garage, but yeah, the Swordbearers Brotherhood power
is the bee's knees. And in combination with empiric amplification, you could just do some heinous things. It's great.
Ramshackle is like, I mean, you're gonna get 3 damage off of your psi cannons anyway, but increasing the psi cannon or the silencer, I guess, doesn't really matter because it'll just go back to 1 damage.
Yeah, against Orc buggies. But actually, funny story. So I did in my game 4 against that Orc opponent, I did get empiric amplification and the +1 to wound off. And then I shot my Dread Knight, my Nemesis Dread Knight, my Grandmaster. And I spent 1 CP for Psychic Onslaught because this is another important thing. I really like the Cyclic Onslaught stratagem, which is +1 AP and +1 strength on your weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really relevant with a strength 5 weapon. So if you got a strength 5 weapon into a T6 body, it's winning on 5s.
Yeah.
But with +1 to wound, you're winning on 4s, and then with +1 strength, you're winning on 3. So it's essentially +2 to wound.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is great. This is a really big breakpoint. And I shot this one Grandmaster at 2 buggies in a unit. I hit all 6 times with the Psy Cannon. I wounded all 6 times with the Psy Cannon, and they were dead. Like he didn't get a save because of the extra AP. And I was like, I did it for the Gatling, but I just killed him with just the Psy Cannon. Just 18 wounds. Get out of here. You're gone.
Yeah.
Winning on 2s, dead. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. So his eyes just got big. He's like, oh well, there goes that buggy.
At that point in the game, he was just like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the list, and I was actually using Prescient Brethren up until like list submission on my second detachment. So I really like the reroll 1s to hit and wound stratagem. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's real good.
But and the thing I actually really like it is on the Grandmaster Nemesis Dreadnought, because then you're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s to wound. Like it's very efficient. And then that's an amazing target for that Psychic Onslaught stratagem that I was just mentioning, +1 strength, +1 AP, if it's a good. But I realized I looked at the math on the interceptors, because obviously I've got nearly 500 points in interceptors, so I want to make sure that I'm utilizing them. And the math on reroll 1s to hit and wound on them works out to the exact same amount of damage output versus every target as +1 attack in combat with their psychic power, and that doesn't cost CP.
I've played around with the Prescient Brethren a little bit as well, and at least as a newer player, those command points are a real crutch for me, because I'll be in like a real bad spot, or I realize I need to make this play happen, and so the Warlord trait for the Prescient Brethren to go ahead and get back command points too is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was my other deciding factor, is that I couldn't fit that Warlord trait into the list. However, I realized later on after list submission that my Tech Marine didn't need to be in my Sword Bearer's Patrol. Its abilities are not Brotherhood locked at all, so it could have been my Warlord in the Prescient Brethren detachment, still getting out the +1 to hit, still being able to heal flat 3 wounds, and I could have either spent the CP to give it an extra Warlord trait to give me the CP back, or moved my Unyielding Anvil Warlord trait somewhere else potentially.
Yeah, I mean, keeping the Unyielding Anvil on a Grandmaster, because they're just faster than the Tech Marine, and you can,
in a way,
you can give it to and that way you can give OBSEC to like your interceptors. I realized that the Tech Marine's not going to be shooting very much, because who cares? So you can just advance him every turn, but
that's what I was doing, advancing him every turn, and he moves 6, not 5, which is lovely. But so my basic strategy then was that I would have the 3 Sword Bearers Dreadnoughts, the 2 Dreadnoughts and the Grandmaster, and the Tech Marine as a sort of castle, and they would dominate one flank, and then my Rapier's Grandmaster, which has all the tricks with the 3-up invo and the Sigil of Exigence, would sort of go to the other flank and then sort of move about as needed. So having the Tech Marine, who already wants to be within range of the Dreadnoughts, giving the Dreadnoughts OBSEC was pretty cool.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'll have to.
A couple of times people would send like 5-man over, of OBSEC or whatever it was, to take an objective off of me, but like it was just fodder because I was dominating that flank. So it was never a big issue.
Yeah. So the Rhino, I am starting to see the appeal of a 4-up invulnerability Rhino with some of our squishy tech or strike squads in it. Is that how you were using it? Were you kind of like shoving it up one flank with the the invul on it and kind of saying, please shoot me?
No, not really. I think that is
Okay.
a good use of the Rhino. I really like moving it into just a safe spot, basically, and then projecting threat from there with a 15-inch disembark from the interceptors. But I think that is certainly a good use of it. I don't know that I would normally. So I had my librarian as my caster that I would often use the 3d6 cast on to make sure I got a gate off that was important and sanctuary off that was important. So I would normally put 5 strikes on a backfield objective and just put sanctuary on them to ensure that they weren't shot off the objective.
Okay. That's a
But I
excellent
think
point.
that's with the way that the event had terrain, they were using the WTC terrain setups, which I'd not used before, but were pretty good. I would move the Rhino into a ruin, and then often I'd be like a bit exposed or like not 100% safe on the back flank, and just keeping the sanctuary on the back guys was handy just in case.
Okay. I'm always trying to use sanctuary to like support my offensive stuff, or if I get a squishy interceptor squad into combat with a hard hitting unit, or I need to, I'll try to keep them in the game with sanctuary.
Yeah, and 100% I would do that as soon as I was going in with interceptors. They would get sanctuary. But,
okay.
Just on turn 1, often like I mentioned earlier, interceptors don't make it across the board far enough turn 1. So I would not.
Yeah.
If I didn't have interceptors going out to get like forward deploying units or similar, I wouldn't need sanctuary there. So that would sort of default to my backfield unit.
Gotcha. So
but using on the Rhino is also handy.
So what you're saying is, what were these like backfield objectives pretty exposed, or was it just a ruin so they could still get shot? And so you said, oh well, I'll just layer on one more level of protection, or
it varied. Sometimes they were ruined, sometimes they weren't. But yeah, that's something I could have done more. I guess is being more aggressive with the Rhino and use sanctuary on it. It's not something it's something I thought of, but not something I utilized at this event.
I mean, I was just thinking...
But with movement, you could keep it safe, generally, the Rhino.
Okay, yeah, Dineeth was talking about how the terrain at this event was pretty thick. But I know when I've used Rhinos in the past, they tend to get focus fired. It's like if you bring a Land Raider ever, everybody's like, no, I need to kill that, like, today. Right now. And so if you can put an invul on it, a 4-up especially, suddenly it starts to make those really efficient Dark Lance shots look a little less efficient. And then you're also keeping your infantry safe in a vehicle, so AdMech can't use like radium rounds or whatever it's called for their auto wounds on 5. And I don't know. That was my thought process. And then if the Rhino's still alive, you can always use it to move block and be generally obnoxious.
Yeah, I use that very well against Dineeth, actually.
Nice.
Just thinking about it though, my Rhino died in game 1, and that was it. So like people didn't care about my Rhino.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would love.
And I positioned it defensively most of the time.
Nice. I think it'd be nice too to like eat Overwatch.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
that's something I have used it for.
Yeah,
not at this event.
Right. Like, I don't care about the Rhino now. It's done what it needs to do, so I'll just have it eat Overwatch from something. Yeah, something horrible.
3 Chronos. 3 Chronos is where it's eating the Overwatch every time.
I was just thinking about, I had a game against a friend of mine who played Iron Warriors. And I had a 5-man interceptor squad and a 9-man, and the 9-man was buffed all to hell with like the rapier strat and the rapier's power. And, I was in Tide of Convergence with Word of Power, and he brought his greater brass scorpion. And I asked him, I'm like, do you want me to play Words of Power where it's two mortal wounds? And he said, yeah, sure, like, bring it on. So I charged the 5-man in first. They got wrecked in Overwatch. And then the 9-man came in and just punked the Greater Brass Scorpion.
That's brilliant.
So I was thinking, like, it would be better if I could have rushed in a Rhino, but I think...
Out of curiosity, how much damage did you do with mortal wounds to the Brass Scorpion?
It was 20 mortal wounds, and then 7 regular damage got through. And he was down 1 wound from the previous shooting phase, which was exactly 28 wounds, which exactly killed it.
Nice.
It's 525 points too, and
I don't really like. I mean, I never wanted to use a chaplain because I thought it would get FAQ'd, and I didn't want to I guess rely on a crutch that I didn't think would be good. And the other thing is, I just felt like it wasn't really reliable or versatile.
No,
so it's just like a 3+.
Yeah,
and the sort of the timing of it is awkward as well, because like I'm using a Rhino or Deep Strike, or you have to have them on the board in a certain position. And
yeah,
but the power's obviously there.
Yeah, I told my buddy, I'm like, hey, look, like, this combo is crazy good, but I have to get a power off. I have to get them in position. I have to get them not killed in Overwatch, and I have to get a litany off, which is one of the reasons why I brought a 9-man, is I could kind of like snake them back to make sure that they were in range to get the litany on the next command phase. And because Grey Knights don't have Master of Sanctity or Wise Order, so a 3-up is decidedly unreliable when you need that litany to go off. And yeah, I know you can spend 2 CP in any phase to get it anyway, but it's like, oh, that hurts. It really hurts. Like, I play Deathwatch. Oh, please. Sorry.
Sure?
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's just like the 2 CP +1 to cast aura from a brother captain for 1 turn. It's just like, oh, it's ridiculous.
So that is an interesting thing that I learned when I was talking to the Vanguard tactics guys, Jake, especially. He was saying the same thing. He's like, I didn't want to bring the chaplain for Words of Power because I'm pretty sure that's gonna get fact. But he's like, I love the +1 to cast aura. So he brings that. He from
a chaplain, or
so there's a +1 to cast
blessings.
So there's a +1 to cast aura litany, and if it goes off, great. Like, now you're 8th edition Grey Knights kind of with your +1. But otherwise, if it doesn't, he's like, it wasn't gonna break the game if it didn't go off, unlike Words of Power where you're like, okay, now it's a power sink, I have to get this, right? So now you're like, do I spend 2 CP? And it's just this horrible like cascade of bad choices that you have to make, where he's just like, nope, +1 to cast feels great. It's a Grey Knights character, so it's got all the character powers.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see it. I do consider a chaplain with that litany, because the powers are good, the blessings, but the maledictions I think where the real power of the codex is, with the +1 to wound, the +1 damage. The +1 damage is amazing if you can get it off.
So good. Nothing like telling your friends, like, no, these are now 3 damage halberds. And they're like, what? Why?
Yeah, I had a game today versus Drukari, and I charged some Chronos with my Grandmaster, and I was like, all right, this is D6 damage. All right, that's 7 damage. Classically, my friend passed like too many 5-ups, but I rolled 7 damage like 4 times versus him.
You're better than I am. I hate rolling D6 damage, man. It's always 1 or 2 for me. Like, high end would be maybe a 4. I'm like, 4 damage.
I had good dice all event as well, which helped. I tend to be a lucky guy, so I'm good at rolling 4s.
Nice.
4s.
Yeah, exactly. Man, the 4-up invul on the Dread Knights are just like so clutch. I had a long talk with Stefan from One Last Blade before the codex dropped where we were talking about things we would like to see. And one of the things about the Dread Knights is we're like, what are you supposed to do with this thing? Right? Like, what is its job? It's like, it's too squishy to be like, it's like a Redemptor Dreadnought style gun platform.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not fast enough to be like an Invictor warsuit. It can't forward deploy like one. Like, what is this thing supposed to do? So I was saying, I hope they either, like, I hope they make them really tanky, and they did, and they managed to do that by adding 1 wound, which going to 13 wounds, I cannot tell you how many times I've had a Dread Knight brought to like 7 wounds. And I'm like, great, I'm not bracketed yet. Like, I took 6 damage, but I'm still in my top bracket. So at least I get one more turn where this guy is at like full fighting power. And then he'll probably die, you know, on the next turn. And then they just gave him a 4-up invul. I was really worried that they were gonna like bring him to T7 and try to make him like a Redemptor. And I'm glad that they didn't. And they also added that inch of movement, which is nothing to be, you know, like balked at. That extra inch is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of when I was playing triple Flyrant in early 8. Their T7 with a 4-up invul.
Oh wow!
But having a 2-up save, I love having a 2-up save, because things like Storm Bolters, you know, just would chip it. You know, and yeah, the 2-up saves really make that. And I didn't see any on the weekend, but I imagine that Volkite Contemptors, which are like everywhere, are not very effective versus them.
No,
right? But not like they are versus Raiders.
Yeah, because I mean, well, all you need on a Raider is 1 AP to get them down to their 5-up invul. So after that, it's money.
And Mortal Wounds are great versus Dark Eldar, whereas at least we get the 5-up Feel No Pain, and the 5-up Feel No Pain for Mortal Wounds is great.
I laugh every time. I'm like, oh no, I perils. I get to save against my own mortal wounds that I just did to myself.
It's brilliant.
So much.
It's so good.
So funny. So you have 4 strike squads total in this list.
Yeah.
I was talking to Axel from Minnesota. He won an RTT with Grey Knights, and he was saying a lot of the reasons he brought a strike squad in his Storm Bearers detachment was to get off that power, so he could cast.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
Like, so he could cast Hammer Hand on the Dread Knights, cast Empiric Amplification with the Grandmaster, and he'd cast the Brotherhood power with the Strike Squad, and then all the Dread Knights are now just, you know, Super Saiyan. Yeah,
that's a really good idea. I often deployed my sword bearers strikes on the backfield objective, just because when I deep struck in my other units, they will often be around the Grandmaster, so they would benefit, whereas the sword bearers guys would not. But that's a really good idea. I like that a lot.
Oh, well, there you go. Hey, I'm helping.
Yeah. One thing I guess I'll talk about quickly is Tide. So we were sort of briefly talking about the Tide of Convergence and the Mortal Wounds.
Yeah.
That came up once where I was in the Tide of Convergence and did some sweet Mortal Wounds, which is actually a really cool story from my first game. I don't know. Do you want me to go through each game?
I usually get into the matchups right after we're done talking about the list. But if it's pertinent to the list conversation, please.
I'll tell that story later.
Okay.
But my favorite Tide. So I did use Tide of Convergence a bit, but I mostly used it for the extra range on the early turns to make sure that the Dread Knights were getting at the vulnerable targets. But my favorite Tide is the reliable Charges Tide.
Oh man. Okay.
It's so good. Like, my Grandmaster can't fail a 7-inch charge. You just can't fail.
Yeah. So, and then everybody
came up
else
so many times.
And then everybody else that the Grandmaster charged also now cannot fail a 7-inch charge.
Yeah,
right?
it's great.
Because first
the reliability.
yeah. I so when they first previewed Tide of Celerity on Warhammer Community, the Grey Knights Facebook group and the Grey Knights Discord were really poo-pooing it. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I wish it was like +2 to charge or plus, and or advance in charge or something, right? They're like, oh, well, there's a lot, and this could have been better. I'm never going to use it. Not to say everybody was that way, but, being an online community, sometimes the squeaky wheel is the squeakiest and, the loudest. But the really high level players that I've spoken to are like, no, Tide of Celerity is amazing.
Yeah, it's so good. And especially when you're like in the later turns of the game, like turns 2, 3, especially when you're committed and you're committing, making 5, 6 charges and they're all happening is just crippling.
Yeah.
Absolutely crippling.
There's a there's a bat rep with Stefan from One Last Blade where he is going into his charge phase and he fails 3 charges, and just earlier in his psychic phase he's like, should I switch to Celerity? I don't know, I think I'll stay in Convergence for those sweet mortal wounds. And then he failed 3, 6, like 5 and 6-inch charges.
Yeah, it happens.
And his opponent's like, if you were in the tide of charging, you would be in on all of them. And he's like, oh, you're right. It's like a mental breakdown.
What's better than doing more damage is actually making the charge.
Right. And
they do plenty of damage in combat.
That's what I was just going to say. I was drinking some water, but I'm also finding the more that I play, once I'm stuck in and swinging, with like hammer hand rerolls and grandmaster rerolls or like Drago rerolls, it doesn't matter. You're gonna do so much damage against most things. I guess if you go after like a plague burst crawler or some other like high toughness damage reducing beefy vehicle, you might want those mortal wounds slapping them in the face, but
maybe.
But getting off those charges is money. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And Celerity helps you do that. And then if you combine that with like a lot of folks now, I've seen there's a meta shift where folks are bringing Blades of Victory because
you mentioned that.
Yeah, so their Brotherhood power is reroll charges.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if you have Celerity 9-inch charge, come out a deep strike, cast it on yourself. Guess what? You have like an 84% chance with rerolls of making that 9-inch charge. It's really solid.
I did think that is. So I actually was just. So it took me a long time to figure out the maths, right, on the charges and Celerity. So I was actually just trying to work out percentages with my calculator on my computer.
Yeah.
So I worked out that a 9-inch charge, most people know is about 28% successful. So that's 10 chances in 36. But with the Celerity, it gives you 4 extra chances. So that goes up to 39%. So that's like a 10% increase in successful charges at 9 inches. And then if you add Thirst to the Fray for +1 to charge, that takes you to about somewhere between 50 and 55%. I couldn't remember if it was 18 or 20 chances out of 36. So it's pretty, I think it's 20. So it's 55%. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
And then if you add in, that's without a CP reroll. So,
right. But so yeah. Blades of Victory give you that CP reroll for free. Right.
Yeah.
So if you have a clutch unit coming down out of deep strike, or like you do a teleporter play with the 2 CP strat,
Yeah.
If you're in celerity and you have the reroll from either a CP or the blades of victory, you can almost guarantee that charge. But the way rerolls work is you can't reroll a reroll, right? So like,
Correct.
if you had the blades of victory reroll for charge, you can't then spend a CP to reroll it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what
so
I thought.
I think from some quick maths, I think it would only be about a 60% chance with a 9-inch charge in celerity, because if it's 38%, that leaves 62% that of the time you fail, and then you make 38% of that 62% again. So you add like half-ish. So I think it'd be about 60%.
Okay.
My maths might be mistaken,
Yeah,
but
I've seen math elsewhere that it's more like 80, but I could be completely wrong. And if anybody wants to chime in the comments below, please, please let me know. Regardless, it also makes it so that with the Blades of Victory power, when they come down, you have that free reroll.
yeah, it's nice.
And then you have a reroll saved up, 1 CP on another unit, because you.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you need to get off
Yeah, you could
two,
only use that one unit. Yeah.
right? Well, if you're in the
that's
tide of escalation, you can use it on 2. But
And
if
it-
you're in the tide of
but then you-
escalation, then you're
Yeah.
not in the tide of celerity. So. Yeah, there's a lot of intricate play in our tides and how we use them.
And that's what I liked about Grey Knights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
In 8th edition with the Psychic Awakening, it became a very complicated army, which is cool. Intricate.
I like that it's a choice now, really, right? Because in 8th, we had arguably 2 really good tides, and then we had the rest were, I mean, one was garbage that no one used. That was the Tide of Fury or whatever, to reroll
Yeah.
hits in
I
combat.
guess you still had the cover tide, which was good. And then the smite tide was obviously great. And then the shooting tide was money. So
Yeah. I almost never used the smite tide because our smites at 1 damage were just they were like overpowered against demons, and then they were, just little chip damage is the way that I thought of them in 8th. But
well, with my 8th edition iteration, I guess that was also you only started playing in 9th, right?
yeah, I started playing at the very end of 8th. I got in like 2 games on Tabletop Simulator of 8th.
Yeah. So I used to be able to deep strike in, I'd deep strike in 30 strikes and just have 2 average smites from all of them, and they would all be on 4s because it didn't increase smite didn't increase back then, and you got +1 to cast. So it was,
Oh my god. Okay.
6 of them, that's 12 mortal wounds. That would kill, any vehicle that was out of position, basically.
Yeah, okay. I see where you're going now. Yeah, by the time I was playing, I still the 8th Ed Codex, but we had and we still had +1 to cast, but smite still got harder. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that's a great transition. How about them full damage smites?
Yeah, great. Really handy.
So
I think a lot of people perceive Grey Knights as a psychic damage dealing army, and they certainly can chip with smites, but for the most part, I had Vortex of Doom in the list, but I didn't get to utilize it much. I think they're mostly about the buffs, right?
Yeah.
Debuffs.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. But I like to use it first. I had a game against my White Scars friend the other day, and I had a Grandmaster and a Dread Knight in his backfield. He charged with some shaft assault interceptors. One of them was still alive at the end, and so on my turn, I just smited him off the board, and that way I could still shoot at other things that I needed to be actually shooting that weren't just this stupid little assault intercessor. So that was nice. And then I could still charge as well. It was very handy for like just go away.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, we've gone over the list. I don't really have a whole lot. Oh, I guess one question I have. Drago is like ubiquitous in everybody's list right now. Like you can't get away from him. I was joking with another Grey Knights player. I think it was Axel, where he played a mirror matchup and they both had Drago. It's like there's like two Dragos on the field. Yeah, exactly.
Spider-Man meme.
That's exactly the joke that we made. Yeah, is that like Spider-Man meme. So, what made you say, "Oh, I don't need his full rerolls"? Because his full rerolls are great, and then he is an absolute beat stick in combat.
So I played a couple of games. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. So I played a couple of games with various lists, trying to work out what I wanted to take before I settled on using the Dread Knights. And Drago was a part of that. I again, like you said, it's ubiquitous. Most people are starting lists there. So I guess the things that took me away from Drago was that I found it hard. Sort of as I mentioned for the chaplain, like you sort of have to have the stars align a little bit in terms of where your units are placed to be able to get the full rerolls to hit on a unit of interceptors, which I think are the unit you want to utilize the best.
Yeah.
With the rerolls. So I felt like getting the interceptors out put them in danger, and then I wouldn't be getting them in the command phase anyway. And then I had Drago go into a Telemon and just didn't do what I expected him to do. I mean, Telemons are really durable, like to be fair, but I was just sort of underwhelmed, and I found positioning him for maximum effect hard. And then the other important thing was in the battalion iteration that this list began with. He's a named character, so he can't take any of the gifts or the visions, which I think is where a lot of the power in the book is, in those utility picks. And I had the Gem of Intoku, whatever it is, on my librarian initially, but I lost it again in the point shuffle. But yeah, those are the main reasons I didn't like using him. Okay. And I guess some people might make an argument that you could switch the librarian into Drago, and then you could switch the Rhino out, and you have the same list, right? It's 180 points, but I think the Rhino is really good. I'm not sure if the Libby stays in the list in future iterations. It was handy, but I don't think it was essential. But yeah, I don't feel like I missed Drago particularly.
Listen, those are interesting points that you made. I find my playstyle is I'm pretty cagey turn 1 and maybe even turn 2, if it's like a really slow army, like Death Guard or something, where I want I want them to get out into the midfield, and I want to guarantee those charges. I want to to do all that. So for me, it's been like I can put rerolls on a regular Dread Knight from Drago for like turn 1, maybe turn 2, and then turn 3, I'll stick it on the interceptors when I know that they're in range.
Yeah, and I think that's like a common, like a Sword Bearers Patrol with Drago and 3 Dread Knights is a pretty good attachment. Not Patrol, Spearhead. Yeah, definitely.
That's definitely something I have in most of my lists right now, is exactly that.
And then I guess the other thing, I tried out a strike heavy list with strikes, interceptors, and purifiers, and minimal, just the one Grandmaster. And I quickly realized that the strikes just die. Like they've got good output, but they're not durable, and especially against Drukhari, everything in the Drukhari army just kills them.
Yeah,
like, just everything.
Yeah.
So I felt like even though you could get a good amount of wounds on the table, they were just not durable wounds. So the Dread Knights, and then the other problem with strikes is that they can't pop they can kill the raiders, but they can't get to the juicy stuff inside. Yeah. So you lack range damage, and I think the Dread Knights perfectly fill that role where they can pop raiders for you to be able to then storm bolter down whatever's inside.
Those are all great points. I mean, I was talking to Dineeth yesterday, and I'm like, offensively, a strike squad is basically blade guard.
Yeah.
Effectively. There are some differences, but defensively, they are not blade guard.
Yeah.
And they're also 22 points, not 35. I think it's 35 for a blade guard, but I mean, yeah, we kind of play like Drukhari in a way. If you're going with a lot of strike squads, we're playing in that way, but we don't have the amazingly fast open top transports that the Drukhari have to get those squishy units into the position that they need to be. We have gate and we have deep strike and stuff like that to help kind of mitigate that stuff. But yeah, our strikes are definitely squishy, and you can only cast Sanctuary once a turn, so it's not like you can just stack Sanctuary on all of our strike squads or something. So
Well, and that's right, and they're more durable than Incubi with more wounds, but like they're also 30 points more, like 110 points for 5 strikes or 80 points for
5 Incubi. And Incubi can make you fight last.
And they advance and charge, and they get on 2s. Like, I mean, they're an exceptional unit, Incubi, but you can't play the same way.
And if Drazar is nearby, they're gonna reroll all wounds. Yeah, it's a
+1 to win.
Is it +1 to win? Okay, my bad. Yeah. I know Drazar only buffs Incubi, and they make them even a better blender. Yeah,
it's obnoxious. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I actually do have one last question on the list. How did you feel the Great Hammer did? Because the D3+3, potentially D3+4, if you're in Titan Convergence, or if you have Empiric Amplification off on a unit. So, how's that feel?
To be honest, it didn't really come up much.
Okay.
It made it to combat a couple of times, but the reality was that having a flank with the Grandmaster and 2 Dread Knights, people didn't want to go near that flank. Like, they didn't want to bar that combat potential. So
yeah.
And it would typically be positioned behind the 2 Dread Knights because of deployment. So with the redeploy or whatnot, I would deploy the Dread Knights quite aggressively. And then both Grandmasters and the Rhino would be behind ruins. So assuming I was going first, I would have the Dread Knights in a more forward deployed position, so the Grandmaster would naturally sort of sit behind. But I like the swords a lot. I like the swords. That's definitely my preference, but I think it was fine. It was fine. It's nice, reliable, big damage if you can find the right target for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Redemptor fist.
Yeah.
Effectively, at that point, yeah.
It might have gotten into one of Dineeth's Redemptors. I think it did. Yeah.
Well, that is not a fight the Redemptor's gonna like very much.
No, not when I charge it.
Right. Yeah, and then even if it doesn't die, it's probably on its bottom profile. Best case, it's on its middle, and you have a 4-up invul.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. All right, let's get into your matchups. Unfortunately, I am a noob when it comes to navigating down under pairing, so I'm not entirely sure how to look up what your matchups were, which I know you can do in best co's pairings.
Yeah, I mean, I can pull up the exact list, but I've actually got a pretty good little note section to go through.
Great.
The missions and what secondaries I took and the overall score.
So let's get into your matchups now. Round 1 was against...
Round 1 was against Simon Gotchevic. So I've got everybody's lists up, but I won't go through most of them. But this one was a really weird mixed Eldari list. So I'll just super quickly run through it. So he had Coulter Strike Patrol with a Succubus with a Chardonnay Impaler, Competitive Edge, Dark Lotus Toxin, which is a really weird Succubus. So it was like Strength 5, -2, 3 damage, and it could consolidate away. So I was like, oh, that's super unique. I liked it a lot. And then he had another Chucky Succubus that did mortal wounds, and the Triptych Witch, 5 Witches. Then he had an Obsidian Rose Dark Eldar attachment with a Master Archon. That was the classic Jin Blade Hatred Eternal. So it's like Choppy as 10 Trueborn with the standard triple heavy weapon, and then 5 Cavalettes, 5 Mandrakes, 5 Incubi, 2 Raiders, and a Venom. And then he had a Craftworld detachment. I think it's a Spearhead. It's got an Autarch, 5 Fire Dragons, which I've never played against before, 5 Warp Spiders, 3 Shining Spears, and then 3x3 Dark Reapers with the Tempest Launcher to shoot out line of sight, 2 Falcons, which again I've never played against, and a Night Spinner. So it was like this bizarre sort of MSU Eldari build, and crazily it started with 2 CP.
Well, I mean, it sounds like he's got, what, 3 detachments? Because he's got Craftworld,
yeah,
he's got Drukhari, and he's got Harlequins, right?
No, two different Drukhari. So he's got Trophy Drukhari and Shitty Drukhari.
Woo. I guess if you have enough buffs and Warlord traits and stuff, you don't need your CP, right?
Yeah, so he's got really good shooting platforms, transports, and then some really choppy characters. And just sort of like, it was a really snowflakey, tech-heavy Eldar list. And we had like a week coming up, or nearly a week, where we knew who we were facing in round 1. We knew the mission, we knew the terrain. So a lot of people were sort of, thinking about their matchups, yada, yada, yada. And
how
Simon,
could you not?
Simon had said, I want first turn, and I want him to not roll too many 4s, and I'll be fine. And he came to the wrong place, because I'm Mr. Rolling 4s. So, and I went first. I didn't know if I wanted to go first, but he didn't want me to, so it worked out really well.
It sounds like there's a bit of like Fog of War too, where you're like, what is this list?
Yeah, for sure. I was just like, I've played Drukhari, and I played a tiny bit of Craftworlds, but not much. So I was sort of familiar, but like I was like, Fire Dragons, what do they do? So yeah, it was interesting. So I went first, and I redeployed first, and then he phantasmed, and we were playing on Dawn of War. So he phantasmed his stuff to sort of one side, to just load up one side, and I had sort of spread my dreadnoughts out fairly evenly to sort of mitigate what he could do there. He didn't really give him much to do turn 1, so I just moved up, did the Psychic Ritual on a bunch of objectives, tried to get in a relatively safe space with 5 Interceptors, then I put Sanctuary on them to hold an objective, and then I shunted and gated Dreadnoughts to get angles, and did a little bit of damage. I killed the Shining Spears.
Okay. I mean, those bikes are so fast. So
yeah,
and they
he
fly
was sort of
everything.
using them. He was using them to screen, so he had like castles in a ruin on either edge, and then he put the Shining Spears between, just to sort of make sure I couldn't like gate or shunt between either castle to get angles down their side, so they were exposed. So I shot them, and I was in the tighter convergence to get the extra range because they were deployed like on the back. So he responded. He got his Fire Dragons out, and then shot them and fire and faded them back into the Reaper, which was pretty cool. And they got D6 damage. They're sort of like the old Eldar versions of the new Melter Boys, sort of the Eradicators. So not as good as Eradicators, but similar sort of setup. And fortunately, he just whiffed, and I rolled 4s, so he didn't do any damage, or he did minimal damage. I think he got 1 through for 2 or 3 damage on 2d6, pick the highest on a Dread Knight. And then he charged onto the objective that I'd taken with my Interceptors, with his Succubus that does mortal wounds, and wounds on 2s, and there's -3 damage too. And
the whip.
Yeah, with the whip. That's right. So this is really important because he took engagement fronts, and so these were his engage points. And he fought my 5 interceptors, and he put 8. He killed one with mortal wounds. I didn't fail. I failed both of the fuel events, and then he put 8 saves on me. And I had the 4-up invuln, and I rolled 7 5-ups out of 8. So he killed. He was not happy.
Yeah.
He killed 2 interceptors, and then I got to fight back. So I put 1 interceptor into the venom, and I did 2 mortal wounds, and he failed 2 saves, and I just 1-hit the 6-wound venom. And then the other 2 interceptors did 1 mortal wound, and I got 3 wounds through, so he couldn't even CP reroll, and killed the succubus. So I just 3 interceptors, just like aced
MVP.
his 2 units.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
that is ballsy that you split fire. I would have just gone after the succubus personally, but
he based me with the venom so that I couldn't.
You couldn't pile in.
Activate. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was pretty hilarious. So I denied him engagement fronts, and he got 0 for the game on engagement fronts.
Oh wow!
Because after that, I had complete domination of the board. Those interceptors could then charge his castle. I nearly killed the raider with the Trueborn on that side, and then I just went ham on the right-hand side where he'd come out, and I killed the Night Spinner. I killed some of the Dark Reapers, killed the Raider, killed the Falcon. Like, I just destroyed everything on that side, basically. And he was sort of holed up behind a ruin. And he then proceeded to charge me. So I mustn't have killed the Raider. No, I killed the Raider, but everything that got out was okay. I killed the Raider, and I killed the Witches because I didn't want him to offset the objective away from me. So his Incubi and Archon charged my Grandmaster, and he managed to do some damage with the Archon. No, he managed to do some damage with the Incubi. He split fire, and he left 1 strike alive to leave me with obsec on the objective. And then my Grandmaster interrupted, put 8 wounds on his Archon. First save, 1. So he fouled his thing, and the game was just over from there. He managed to.
So for folks who are familiar with Aeldari, their Archons, I think it's a relic, and
it's just their basic rule. So it's called Shadowfield, I think. Shadowfield.
So they have a 2-up invul, and yes, you heard that right. 2-up invul until they fail 1, and then they no longer have an invul at all.
And they no, that's not true. So
it drops to like a 5 or something.
Yeah, so everything, they've got power from pain. So everything in the army that has power from pain is a 6-up invul.
Gotcha.
But they also can't. They can never reroll the save. So it's a 2-up non-rerollable invul.
Okay. So yeah, I've had an Archon with that Shadowfield tank and 8-man on Paladin blob. Not in 9th, but in 8th. I've had them just go to town on those 2-up saves and stay alive. It was pretty nuts, but all right. Anyway,
that was pretty crazy. From there, I ended up getting 93 points. I took Purifying Ritual for 14, Engagement Fronts for 12, and Raise It Banners High for 12.
Purifying Rituals. Am I right?
Oh, so good. He ended up with a 68. So I lost 1 Dread Knight, and then in turn 5, he had like 5 Warp Spiders and a Succubus left, and he sent his Succubus over and he killed my other Grandmaster, which was a bit of fun. Yeah, so that was him getting some revenge.
That's funny.
But yeah, he's a really good player, Simon. I think he has playing for Australia on TTS. Like he's a mover and a shaker.
Okay, he's playing lots of TTS. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. You want to go to round 2, or is there anything else you want to discuss for round 1?
Not really. I think I guess the important thing is going first allowed me to put a lot of pressure on and then dominate forward positions. So he couldn't really get to the middle objectives. He
Hmm.
tried to contest it, and I got lucky and killed him off of the left hand side, and the right hand side I was too strong on for him to come near.
Gotcha.
Um, so from that position, I was just pushing him back. I don't like raise the banners as a secondary in general, but with an army like this that can kind of push forward and keep people back because they're afraid of the melee punch. On some missions, it's a good choice. And this was a 6 objective mission with 2 objectives in my deployment zone. And
How,
I thought compared to Retrieve Octeria Starter, it was you know if he took me off one of my objectives once, I'd still score 8 points, which I think Rod, I often score 8 on anyway, and it would force him to come to me, which I thought was a worthy trade off.
so how does that work? I mean, you can't have one strike. One strike could like start on your objective, raise a banner, and but then it can't do any psychic actions, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I had 2 strikes start, like a strike start on either objective, and then I purified the
Okay.
objectives, I think, with a
So
second
you,
unit.
I got you. Okay. I was gonna say you can't double up from one unit, so I thought banners
No,
and purifying ritual was a pretty bold move.
well, the thing is as well with his army, because it was all fast moving elves in transports, I was worried about him screening me out too much, so I didn't want to put too much in reserves either. So
Gotcha.
having and the other thing is that he had out of line of sight shooting. So he had the Night Spinner and the 3 Dark Reapers that could all shoot out of line of sight. So putting just 5 strikes on an objective um, might have been a bit dicey in terms of him being able to just kill me off of it and then lose me primary points. So loading up 10
I
on
gotcha.
both seemed like a safe way to start the game.
Cool. These are the things that I don't even think about yet. I'm not that far along in my gameplay.
Well, I luckily, like I said, I had 4 or 5 days before the event to analyze and plan. So
Yeah.
um, that's what I came up with.
Cool. Round
Round
two.
round two. So I played Michael Mientes. So he's a lovely guy. I've played him. I've been to 3 events with him and played him each time. So I was very happy to play him. I've been talking to him about coming up and stuff. So that was
Hmm.
really cool. He was playing a Craftworld Elder Brigade, which was wild. And he beat Knights round one. So he had, again, I'll just try and zip through. He had Azurman, Farseer Skyrunner, Warlock Skyrunner, 5x5 Dire Avengers, 5 Rangers, 3x5 Striking Scorpions, 4 man and then a 5 man's. Oh no, they were both 5 mans. Shining Spears, 2 5-man Warp Spiders, 2 Dark Reapers, 2 Night Spinners, and 2 Shadow Weavers. 4 weapons. So similar sort of in ways, but also yeah, crazy in terms of what he was bringing. Um, and we were playing. What mission were we playing? We were playing the 5 objective mission where you want to control the middle. Um, Sorry,
Um.
I'm just clicking
Yeah.
through down on pairings and it will tell me.
No, it's all right.
It's called Sweep and Clear.
Gotcha.
Sweep and Clear. So I took my secondaries. I took Purifying Ritual and Spoiler. I took that every game.
Yeah. It's
Um,
so good.
I took
So good.
Stranglehold because this is a 5 objective mission, and I really like Stranglehold. I think that on 5 objective missions, you're playing the game anyway. You want to be getting onto 3 objectives to stop them holding more.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I almost always take Stranglehold if I can, and I took Direct Assault, which is holding the middle. Um, this game was the only game I didn't finish. So we were having too good a time, basically. And I was maybe too casual. So we got to turn 3 and they said there's 10 minutes left. And we're like, oh, crap. And we quickly scored it up. Michael was actually winning, but he was not winning on the board. It was just a couple of silly mistakes from me. Um, so I went second versus him, and he got a Dread Knight down to 1 wound. And this is the clutch thing about the Tech Marine. So that one where Dread Knight hits on 5s, he gets
Yeah.
+1 to hit, hits on 4s, and he gets healed a flat 3 with the Aetheric Conduit, hits on 3s again.
Yeah.
So
Which, yep.
it's huge.
Yeah, it brings him back to his middle bracket from the heel, and then Awaken the Machine Spirits gives him another +1.
Yeah, and that was amazing.
Good.
So, and he was obviously he shot the closest Dread Knight, so he was my frontmost Dread Knight, and that meant that he could put he was the one with Tidal Convergence who had range on his Dark Reapers and managed to pick up his Dark Reapers. So it was an important Dread Knight in my overall game plan. The Dire Avengers just died. So everything that I shot just died. He was sort of holed up in a corner ruin, and I was taking over the board. I made a really bad decision. I made a charge of my strikes turn 1 onto some striking scorpions, and then he fell back to take the objective, and he had like 2 striking scorpions left, and I decided to put my rhino. My rhino was there, and my interceptors got out, and I decided to put the strikes back into the rhino because I had my rhino and my librarians kill like 2 striking scorpions, and the smite didn't do much. The storm bolters did nothing. I think I killed 1 of the 2, and I charged my librarian in, and it died in combat to this 1 striking scorpion Exarch, and I was like, "What has just happened?" So I gave up Stranglehold there, and then on the complete opposite flank, I had 3 interceptors tangling with 5 warp spiders. And I talked about the previous game how 3 interceptors just killed like a succubus and a venom, and they couldn't kill these goddamn warp spiders. I was just like in combat with them for 3 turns, so I just never controlled that objective. I was always outnumbered. It was so ridiculous.
Oh man.
And warp spiders, like
So
are just like a T3 elf, like they're.
Yeah. So not even with smite or anything. You were just rolling.
I just
real
couldn't
bad,
do it.
real bad from
just,
that spot.
No, I think I was purifying the objective instead of casting.
Oh yeah, that's such a clutch thing about that secondary. I think I have mentioned it every single time it's ever come up in any of these interviews, and I will say it again. The reason, like one of the reasons purifying ritual is so strong is you can do it on an objective that you don't even control.
Yeah, and you're in combat.
You can just toe in and get your 4 points or your 6 points if you're really cheeky. It's strong.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess I was dominating on the board, but he was playing really well. He took engage in all fronts and retrieve Octara starter and to the last, and we scored it up. And there was 10 minutes left in the round, and we're on battle round 3, and he was up by like 3 points. And he's like, "Oh, good game, man. Like, we probably don't have time for another turn." And I was like, "Okay, yep, that's fine." Like, it would have been nice to know that at the start of the turn, and I could have like done the maths and planned it. But I was like, "Okay, that is what it is." And then the TO was there, and he's like, "Look, there's 10 minutes left. If you guys don't finish if you finish on turn 3, you both get a yellow card. Like, they want to keep people progressing at the event."
Oh yeah. Okay.
There is time in the round. You guys can still play. And Mike was like, "No, I don't want to play anymore," because he was winning. And I was like, I would like to keep playing, but I don't want to be sort of that guy. You know what I mean? Like being like, "Oh no, like we need to keep playing so I can win."
Right.
So we decided the fair thing to do was do a dice off. And he said, a 1, 2, 3, we keep playing. 4, 5, 6, we don't play. And I was like, "Oh no, my dice are good. I'm not going to roll a 1, 2, 3," but I did. I rolled a 2. So we played another turn out, and I was able to. He was going first, so this is really cool actually. So he had so on turn 3, he got his Dark Reapers out of behind the building, shot at my Dread Knight, and then fire and faded them. And then he shot his Warp Spiders at my Dread Knight, and so I used my what's it called?
Sigil of Exigence.
Yes, my Sigil of Exigence to go where the Dark Reapers were. So he'd left a hole.
Nice.
And then from there, I had a line of sight to his whole fortress in terms of the Dark Reapers, the Night Spinners, the Sith Warp weapons. Gotcha. And one of the Night Spinners was a While We Stand We Fight, or to the last target. So
wow. So that alone swung it by 3 points.
Yeah, so that was on turn 3, and then I didn't quite kill it, and I
Oh, you
couldn't. I
didn't. Okay.
charged in. I charged in, tried to kill the other Night Spinner, and I tagged the Dark Reapers and tried to like get in to engage. So I wanted to keep the Dark Reapers from falling back and shooting, and then touch the other one. Um, so what he did was he charged me with 5 ranges in his turn, knowing that there was 1 turn left, and he wanted me to not be able to kill his stuff that was important for points. So he charged me with 5 ranges, and I only killed 2 in combat on his turn. And then I cast a smite, and I did 3 damage to kill the rangers.
Mhm.
And then I spent 1 CP to cast a second power, and I got off. I can't remember if it was +1 to wound or +1 damage. I think it was +1 to wound. No, it would have been +1 damage. I don't know. One of those two. What's the better power in that situation? It's probably +1 damage. Yeah, +1 damage. So I got that off, and then I just killed that. So that was denied him 5 points. And I managed to do Psychic Ritual on 4 objectives to get a 6-point turn on that.
Wow.
And I got Stranglehold.
So then this
But there
turn,
was
this turn was a big swing for you then. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so I ended up winning
5 points he lost,
Go
and then you got Stranglehold, which is 3, and then how many for Psychic Ritual? You got 4?
6.
6. So that's a 15-point swing.
Yeah, so I ended up winning by 6 points. And to be fair, like we were having a great time. Like I said, we were mates. I felt very in control during the game, and I just made like some silly little mistakes. Like I said, I got the strikes into the Rhino, which gave up Stranglehold points.
Whoops.
I had 1 strike, and he was charging me with 1 strike and Scorpion. I was like, I'm gonna Overwatch you with 5. I'm gonna spend CP. Like I was doing like fun little things to make the game interesting. But then like time just suddenly caught up with us, and I was like, and I nearly lost it. And I forgot to charge. Well, I tried to charge my interceptors into one of his vehicles, and I failed like a 5-inch charge. But there was actually 1 Dire Avenger on the objective, so he was obsecking the objective off of me as well, and it was like 1 inch away. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just made all these little mistakes to make the game close. And Michael played excellently to his credit, but yeah, it was a good fun game.
That's good. And round 3 was against Dineeth, right?
Dineeth, yes.
Nice.
Sorry, I just pulled up his list, and he's got like a funny little picture saying "fuck, I hate Space Marines."
Yeah.
And it says Wayne Fuchsius, and Wayne's a local celebrity.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that in our other the other interview that I had with him. I purposefully displayed the list from the website to show that image.
I hadn't seen that. That's funny. So he was playing Deathwatch. Obviously, he had a Primaris captain, Tech Marine, and a Reaver lieutenant. A Proteus kill team. I guess this is quite convoluted, the Deathwatch stuff.
Yeah, so he had 3 Proteus kill teams, 1 Spectrus kill team, 3 Redemptors, the Tech Marine, the Captain, and the Reaver Lieutenant. And yeah, it's a
3 Centurions.
That's right, and the 3 Assault Cents. It's a very interesting techie list that does a lot of crazy stuff. And if you'd like to hear about that, dear viewer, that is in the interview that I had with Dineeth just yesterday. I will have a link in the description down below. But it's a very interesting list, and it plays like crazy because it's Deathwatch. So it just like swings at you in ways that you'd never expect.
Yeah, and we were playing on Vital Intelligence. Which is a famously annoying mission for a lot of people. So it's a hold 2-1, and it's got the awkward angled deployment zones.
Yeah, the weird, like, your 40-inch long board edge deployment zone on one side and your 20-inch long deployment zone edge on the other side. Yeah, it's bonkers.
So I often think, and I think part of the reason I won this game was that I was thinking about the way the mission plays and how I like to play the mission. So it sort of plays like hammer and anvil, really. Like you deploy in quarters, but it's hammer and anvil because you have an objective in your deployment zone, and then there's two objectives sort of like just above your deployment zone
Yeah.
on your side of the battlefield, and then the opponent has their other side mirrored. So I was really focused on holding my objectives and then interacting and disrupting his objectives. Whereas his sort of dreadnought castle wasn't really, it was sort of in the middle trying to get angles. It wasn't on the objectives. So he went first, and he had his fancy Spectrus kill team combat squatted, and it was covering the two 5-mans were both covering the 4 objectives. Which is heinous. And these had sticky objectives as well. So if he
Deathwatch,
walks
baby.
if he walks off the objectives, he continues to control them.
Yeah.
But he decided that he was going to be quite aggressive, and he decided he wanted to kill my Tech Marine Warlord to mitigate the aura of OBSEC, which I think considering his list was almost entirely OBSEC, was a problem for him or something that he didn't want to have to deal with. And obviously, just the buffs for the Dreadknights. So he put his 5 Eliminators in the Devastated Doctrine and shot at my Tech Marine. I went to the Tide of Cover. Sorry, I forgot the proper name.
The Tide of Shadows.
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 So even though he was AP3, I was a 1-up save. So I had 4-up saves versus his kill team. And he put 4 wounds on me, and I just rolled 4s. So he didn't do any damage. And then it put him in an awkward spot. I was worried because he controlled like 5 of the 6 objectives straight up, and I couldn't, even if I killed him, he still controlled them. But from his perspective, he used a 250-point unit too aggressively, didn't do any damage, and then left it out to die. So I used 5 interceptors to pick up the guys on his flank and my Grandmaster, my Rapier's Grandmaster. And then the Dreadknights just shot and killed the other squad on my side. One of the Dreadnoughts was able to get in range to hold the objective. And then his turn 2, his Dreadnoughts just saw that Dreadnought and just picked it up. Wasn't even worth a CP reroll. He just demolished the Dreadnought. It was actually pretty ludicrous.
Yeah, those plasma redemptors can throw down the hate, and with all the other shots from like the Icarus rocket pods and the Onslaught Gatling gun, like those are the profiles that like chip wounds off of our 4-up invul 2-up save. That's where like you go from 13 to 11 to 9 to 8, and then it gets shot off the board with that plasma. Yeah,
definitely. And what I had done with the terrain, it was like a couple of they weren't elves. They were just sort of big line of sight blocking walls, sort of like this on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I had mitigated the shooting, and I had like my 1 Dreadknight here that could be shot. And then down here, there was like an L and then a ruin. And so the interceptors that I'd sent in to kill the kill team down there, I'd put Sanctuary on, and I'd move them aggressively up to sort of move block him from getting across into the objectives. So he basically picked up the 2 units that I'd given him, and then sort of went back to me. And this was a really tough tactical turn for me, because I was like, Jesus, he's just demolished a Dreadnought. I don't really want to interact with these projectors at all. But he had sort of set up in staging, instead of being on objectives, he sort of controlled them. He'd sort of set up stages to engage whatever I put out.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to channel my inner GSE player and just play a tempo game where I didn't give him anything to shoot. So I brought in some strikes from reserves to go onto the flank objectives, but didn't commit any forces to be shot and didn't really do anything. I just positioned behind the ruined wall that was blocking line of sight, so that his Redemptors couldn't get to my castle of Dreadknights, and went back to him. So I did no damage. And then Dineeth became a bit overconfident after that, and he sort of charged up the field at me into the mid board with his castle, and sort of held back. He held back from extending his stuff that was in range to interact with me. He came to fight over one objective, but pretty much didn't. He just aggressively positioned to have a good turn 4. And that was a mistake. He was too aggressive. So I brought everything in, obviously being turn 3.
You just collapsed on him. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember Dineeth talking about this, and he said the exact same thing. He's like, I ran up too far, and then when I saw him start piling out units and surrounding me, like the Alamo, he knew it was he knew it was over, because you just got like everything in there, right?
Yeah, so I managed to get +1 damage and +1 to wound off on a Dreadnought, and shot that dead. And I managed to smite half of the wounds off of a Dreadnought. I killed a Contemptor in shooting, and I managed to smite. I had a really funny psychic phase where I hadn't spent much CP because we hadn't really been into each other yet, so I still had 8 or 9 CP. And I started off. I was going to say, I'm going to 3d6 cast. All right, I got the +1 damage power off, and then I'm like, I'm going to spend one more. I'm going to spend 1 more CP to cast the second power. I'm going to cast Vortex of Doom on 3d6. Okay, I'll CP reroll that. But I was like, I just spent like 4 CP on a psychic phase.
If you got him.
And I realized after I re-rolled it that was a really poor psychic power to re-roll, the Vortex of Doom. Like, I really should have kept the re-roll for the +1 to wound from the Sword Bearers, but luckily I got that power off.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I did about half wounds to 1 and killed 1 in shooting, and then I charged that Dreadnought with my Dreadknight, just my basic Dreadknight, with Hammer Hand on it, and it just pumped it. So I killed 2 of the Dreadnoughts. I charged.
Did you use the D6 damage profile?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'd be winning on 5s otherwise. And it'll be 1 damage with the Contemptors, -1 damage.
4s with the +1. Well, but you had that on the other Dreadnought, so never mind. Yeah, that's a good point.
It would be 5s re-rolling. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I did. Yeah. I the +1 to wound is, I think that's only for shooting anyway, isn't it?
I thought it was. But I'll check.
It's just for.
I thought it was just Nemesis. As long as it's a vehicle. Thought it got.
Yeah, it might be
+1 to wound.
Might be right.
Yeah. Which means even your Rhino would get it.
That's funny.
If it was in the Sword Bearer anyway, but
even the Stormbolters, chip. And then I was able to just charge the Interceptors everywhere. I charged 5 Interceptors into his 3 characters, and I planned, and we were playing with intent. So I was like, look, I'm gonna put 1 within range of the Lieutenant, but then I'm gonna consolidate away from the Lieutenant so that he can't just directly into me. And engage the Tech Marine and the Captain. I charged through a wall into his Centurions with 5 Interceptors, and I charged some Proteus teams that were on objectives. So that he decided. Go on.
Sorry, just a real quick note. Empiric Lodestone does only count for ranged attacks, but it's a Sword Bearer vehicle making a ranged attack. So if the Rhino was in your Sword Bearer detachment, it would actually get Stormbolter fire with +1 to wound.
That's pretty great.
That's pretty hilarious. Anyway, sorry.
That's okay. So I managed to kill. I left 1 Centurion on 2 wounds. I did start there. I started with my Dreadknight punking his Dreadnought, and then he interrupted with his Captain and and decimated my interceptor squad. So they didn't do anything to the characters, but it was good just having the 5 interceptors go into 3 characters, put the fear into him. So that's where he had to spend the CP, even though that wasn't a relevant combat at all in terms of ball position. And I also, was that the same turn? I charged the Rhino. Yes, I charged the Rhino that turn as well into the Dreadnought. And then once the Dreadnought had killed the Dreadnought, I was able to pile and consolidate 6 inches, and that stopped his Dreadnought from being able to fit through the terrain and the Rhino to get to my stuff to fight me in combat. So that was really handy.
Yeah.
And that was just a huge turn. I killed so many things. And then the next turn, I basically tabled him. He had five dudes left sitting on an objective. I just killed everything. So it was overwhelming.
Yeah. So it sounds like you and he had the same kind of synopsis then. I mean, you're both pretty experienced players. So like you were saying that combat against the character, he said the same thing. Like I had to be spending CP there to keep them alive, and yeah. So.
Yeah, which I mean, maybe like I don't know that I even in 5 interceptors or 4 interceptors probably killed the captain, but I don't know that the captain was essential at that point in the game. Yeah, I don't know. But it ended up blowing out, so I won 89-39.
Yeah, wow.
And I took Engage on all fronts, Rod, and Purifying Ritual. Oh, there was a really funny moment actually. I had 1 interceptor alive, and it went over to his objective to purify his objective, and it was on 1 wound, and it perils and died and did D3 mortal wounds to the Dreadnought, which is pretty fun.
That's right. I forget about that. If the unit actually dies from perils, it blows up. Forgot.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So if I'd known it was going to do that, I would have positioned it to get all the characters which are close by. But
yeah, but you didn't know.
Cute.
So it sounds like your game against Dineeth was super violent.
Yeah, it was. It was good fun. He's a legend. That's the first time I played him, but I've chatted to him a few times in the past.
Yeah, he's a really
great podcast.
Yeah, I love the Normal Blokes, and he's a really great guy. You know, we are chatting pretty frequently over Discord. So we both love the Deathwatch. All right, so let's jump in straight to your round 4 then.
Yeah, so round 4, I played Paul Gurney. So he was playing Orks. He had a Speedwagh list. So he had 6 scrap jets, 4 rocket truck squid buggies, which shoot out of line of sight, 2 Jacker jets, 2 shock jump dragsters, some Ork bikers, and some store boys and some commandos. So this was again this was a Saturday night. We knew that matchup. I had to think about it all night. I wasn't really sure it was a good matchup. The last time I played a Speedwagh with Chikari, it had been a really hard matchup for me. We were playing on Battle Lines, which is the 4 objective mission, which is Hammer and Anvil. Mm-hmm. So he made some really interesting choices. So I think having a long time to think on it, he made some interesting choices. So he decided to reserve all 6 of his scrap jets, which are like his best unit versus me. So he put them in strategic reserves because he was afraid of the output from the Dreadnoughts, which do have a good profile into them. And then he took While We Stand, We Fight, brought to the last on his War Bikers and his 2 units of Brucker Truck Squid Buggies, which shoot out line of sight. So he was planning to just sort of castle up and then get guaranteed alpha with those scrap jets. What he didn't think about was if he went second, which is what happened. So I went first, and I was very aggressive. He put commandos out because they forward deploy on 1 flank. So I used some interceptors to move, shoot in a psychic phase to try and clear a space to gate my Dreadnought into them, which is what I did, my Rapier's Dreadnought. And it didn't 100% work. There was still a couple of Storm Boys left, commandos left, but I killed them with something else. And I got some angles, and I managed to kill one of the scrap jets no, hang on, is that right? The teleporty ones. What are they called? Shock jump dragster. I killed a shock jump dragster, and I did like 5 wins or 7 wins to one of the Dakar jets, and I was relatively happy with that. Oh, actually, sorry, it wasn't. I just put a normal dread knight on the other side because I also took engagement fronts. I took engagement fronts, bring it down, and purify retreat.
Yeah, bring it down makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I put one over there for engagement fronts. Was the main reason, and to get onto that objective. And then I went. I shunted my Brave Pierce Dread Knight up 9 inches away to get an angle as well. And then he had his 2 units of rocket trucks deployed in a ruin, and I was like, "You're pretty close here." And in deployment, he was very stressed, and I was like, "You're pretty close here, but I'm guessing your intent wasn't to be within 1 inch of the wall." And he's like, "No, definitely not." I was like, "Cool, I won't make that charge." But then I was like,
"That's very nice
after
of you."
After we discussed deployment and stuff, you were obviously pushing, there was a ruin. You're obviously pushing them towards the side of the ruin so that I didn't get an angle on the squid buggies. So I think it's probably fair if I declare a charge to the side of the ruin. I'm like, it's a long charge. Let's just see if I roll it. And I just rolled an 11. And then he's like, "Oh, look, I don't know. With the curved base, I don't know if that's right." And I was like, "Let's just get a T over. It's impartial then. We don't have to stress about it." And then when the TRA came over, I was like, "Oh, I actually got first to the fray, so that's a 12." And so I instantly got into the last rocket truck squid buggies. I rolled the D6 damage. I killed one. I did 3 or 4 wounds to the other one, and he pulled me out of combat. But his other 2 rocket trucks were right behind them, so I just consolidated straight into them and tagged them up.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's where they don't want to be.
And the game was just over from there.
Yeah.
He fell back and charged his war boss into my grandmaster. And I was like, "Okay, hang on. What's his attack profile?" He's like D3. He's got 6 attack and D3 damage. I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna put my info on nothing." And I took no damage or 2 damage or something, and I just killed the war boss. And then on my turn 2, I just screened up both flanks with interceptors and my dreadnoughts and stuff to make sure that he couldn't come in on the flanks. And I killed the 2 rocket trucks in his deployment zone and consolidated back into the one from the first unit to tie that back up. And then he ended up putting 6 scrap jets down on his back line, and it was over from there.
6 scrap
and this
jets.
is the game. Sorry?
6.
Yeah.
Scrap jets.
6. Yeah, which are amazing. They're really good. They killed 1 dread knight, and then my grandmaster just rolled a bunch of 4s. So that one only took 3 damage, and then I redeployed my other grandmaster when he shot at them, and then I just essentially tabled him turn 3.
Wow.
That's
a brutal game.
I managed to. I was like, he's like, "I don't want to play anymore. This is over." I was like, "Yep. Let me just see. I'll just run my psychic rituals to see how many points I get," and I managed to get the 15. So I actually got 100 points that game.
Wow, you took 100 off a Speedwagh orc list, man. Congrats. That's awesome.
It was grim.
I gotta be honest with you. The Speedwagh thing frightens the hell out of me.
Yeah, I wasn't I thought it was a good matchup for both of us. It was not obvious who was going to win that game.
Cool.
So yeah, then I went into game 5. And I didn't know this, but that was part of the reason that Paul was so nervous, because I was in second place. I was guaranteed top 2 going into round 5. So if I lost, I came second. If I won, I came first. So that was really cool. But I ran into Mr. Liam Hackett. So he's an Australian legend.
I'm sorry, who? I didn't hear
it. Mr. Liam Hackett.
Yeah, okay. So you went up against Thousand Suns.
Yes.
Oh boy. So, longest psychic phases of the game.
He was a quick player.
I mean, you trying to deny and him trying to cast, makes for very long psychic phases. Anyway.
Well, yeah. So his list was pretty simple. He had 50 rubrics, 5x10 rubrics, Armin, an Exalted Sorcerer, and 10 Scarab Occult Terminators.
Wow.
And 2 runners.
That's it.
That's it.
That's a lot of rubrics, though.
This was the only game I didn't combat squad in. I thought the 2 10-man interceptors would be better to go into his 10-mans. I went first, which I didn't really want, and I managed to pick up 10 Scarab Occults that were sort of in the middle. We were playing, what mission were we playing? Give me 1 second, I'll tell you. But it was 6 objectives on Dawn of War, and it was a whole 2 mission. It was Overrun.
Okay.
So I managed to kill them, kill 10 rubrics out of the middle objective, and then you had 2 ruins, and we had a forest in our deployment zone, so it was in the forest. I managed to kill them. He managed to put down banners on all 3 back objectives, and then he moved out of the Rhino warp timed the rubrics, and then he used the redeploy thing that they've got. What's it called?
Oh, I don't remember.
Dark Matter Crystal. The Dark Matter Crystal.
That's it.
I put the rubrics. I positioned my Tech Marine poorly in a ruin. I had 5 strikes next to him, and he charged the 10 rubrics into my Tech Marine, and then he made the 9-inch charge with Scarab Occult Terminators into my 5 strikes. My Tech Marine didn't care about the rubric slapping him because they just had no AP, so I was just rolling 2-ups. But he sort of positioned onto my objective, and importantly, he took Stranglehold.
Mm-hmm.
So he took that objective away from me, and he had sort of 10 rubrics and 10 Scarab Occults, and my army was here. So it was like right in the corner. And the rubrics were sort of shielding the Scarab Occults, and he had wrapped my Tech Marine.
Whoops.
So it was great play. I sent my 10 interceptors out of the Rhino, and they went across my deployment zone and charged and killed the rubrics pretty easily. And I spent all my Dread Knights. I lost a Dread Knight as well that he's shooting. Spent all my Dread Knights pounding his Scarab Occults, but it didn't do significant damage. They were so durable.
Yeah.
The Thousand Suns can just guarantee their psychic powers.
Yeah, they've got those like their sorcery points or whatever that they can spend, and based on how many of the sorcerers that they have, they get upwards of 20, and then they can spend and it's per round, and then per turn, and then every like they can do stuff like guarantee a psychic power at 8 points or whatever. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Thousand Suns, so they have all these little tricks to like make a power undeniable or whatever, right? Correct. Yeah.
So he was able to sort of have his Exalted Sorcerer out of deny range, casting at like the back of his Scarab Occult, so I couldn't deny them. And he was doing like -1 to hit, 4 up invuln, and +1 to hit on them.
Yeah.
And then he had Ahriman do 3 mortal wound powers, and then spent some of the points to do another D3 mortals. So that was to my my Rapier's Grandmaster Dread Knight that I failed to charge with into his Rhino.
Oh man.
So he did like 8 wounds or something to my Dread Knight. And then he shot it with a Rhino, and I was like, nah, I'm out of here. So I went back to my deployment zone before he could hurt me with the with the rubrics.
That's so crazy. Because we Grey Knights, we used to have a cast 3 deny 3 character in Voldus, but Voldus went down to 2/2. So it's interesting that Ahriman is still 3/3.
Yeah, so three casts, and then he spent the Cabal points to just do an extra D3 models. It was really a cool little combo.
And you failed all of the Feel No Pains?
No, I made quite a few, but when you're doing like 4 D3 models, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so anyway, I ended up in that position, and so I quickly killed the rubrics, but I couldn't move those Scarab Occult Terminators. I just couldn't move them. And I ended up making some decisions to like I charged the rubrics with one of my Dread Knights as well. Well, I didn't need the Dread Knight, and I decided to just tag the Scarab Occults because they're good in combat, but they're better at shooting. And I just, yeah, they just mulched me. I couldn't clear them off of that objective, and I put too many resources into that bottom right flank to try and clear them off, and unsuccessfully, instead of maybe going for like the top left flank to cancel each other out. So it ended up being a pretty lackluster game from me. I didn't get enough done, and it was sort of like I had my interceptors on my bottom left flank going for his top left flank, but like it was too far. I couldn't, like, it was like a 9-inch charge that I didn't want to risk, and I probably should have made some riskier plays perhaps. I ended up deciding to get them into the Rhino to give myself more movement to propel me forward, but then he got his Rubrics out of that thing and warp timed them and wrapped my Rhino. So he was playing really well.
Yeah, he's a very, very, very good player. Liam Hackett.
I eventually did take that flank from him, and I did end up killing all 50 Rubrics, but his 2 characters, his 2 Rhinos, and the Scarab Occult Terminators stuck around. It was really cool actually, because he regains wounds or models, so like I couldn't even chip them. I'd get a Psy Cannon through, and then it would just auto heal, and then he cast a Psychic Power to get another one back. So he's getting like 2 Terminators back. And yeah,
wow.
It was just
what a brick!
grim.
What a horrible brick! Yeah,
it was really, really good.
Wow. Did the +1 to deny the Grey Knights have come into play at all, or did you?
It's a little bit, but he was good at mitigating, because I was sort of stuck in my battlefield. Like I was doing a I was sort of stuck in my battlefield.
Yeah.
And he was like cast from his sorcerer far away to try and
it's almost like he's played the game before.
and that's the thing he had. He had like 8 games into Grey Knights, and that was my first time playing that style of Thousand Suns list.
Gotcha.
So he had an advantage from that perspective, and he's a better player. And I was just not dynamic enough, and I wasn't aggressive enough, I think, in trying to reshape the board state.
So that's what you would change? You would be more aggressive if you faced Thousand Suns again, or?
If I face Liam again with that same list, I think I just abandon the flank that the Scarab Occults are on and just go after the Rubrics. But I was too worried that my interceptors would go out, not make the charge, and they get shot to death. And I would be trading nothing. But I needed to make some kind of play because I was in a losing position.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, that's a hell of that had to be a hell of a game, though. I mean, it sounds like it, and I mean, I learned a lot just talking to you here. Like, I've watched a couple of bat reps with Thousand Suns. I guess I never realized how durable they can make the Terminators, and then bringing back 2 of them every round is just crazy. Like,
yeah, so I think Liam's playing a different list to the most, but it was a good list. I've been chatting to him in the last couple of days, and he said that after playing against me and Adam, my companion, who came up with me, who he played in round 4, that he probably needed to add another combat element. So he's looking at some different units to do that, and dropping a unit of 10 Rubrics, because the Rubrics don't do anything in combat. They shoot well.
Did he ever tell you why 5 10-mans? Is it just because you could stack buffs on 10-mans better, or? I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some good buffs they can have in terms of they've got AP2 bolters, and they can do +1 to wound on those, +1 to hit. So that's pretty good. They also have an intercept strat, which is 18 inches, which is really challenging to play around with gate and things like that.
Inners? Oh, you mean like
spec scan?
Oh, spec scan. Okay. I thought for a moment you were saying they can heroically intervene 18 inches, and I was just like, that is not okay. I was like, that is not.
I want to play that army. That sounds fun.
Not okay at all. Well, man, thank you so much. It's almost 9 a.m. here. I have to get my day started, and it's what, is it 2 in the morning there now?
1:15.
Okay. So, I mean, you should probably go to bed.
Probably not a bad idea.
Thank you so much for meeting with me. I only asked you to be on the show early your morning today. So like
Yeah, that's right.
less than 24 hours ago. So thank you for the quick turn around. It's awesome to talk to folks from Australia because your meta over there is very different. And it's great to see the Grey Knights doing so well. Because we've been so bad for so long.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I don't think that they're necessarily S tier. I think there's a couple of codexes that are definitely sitting sort of a tier above the Grey Knights.
Yeah.
And the lack of the fight first
Yeah,
stuff hurts.
yeah. I definitely think that's one of our weaknesses. There's like a warlord trait you can take that gives you fight first. We only
In
get
a
fight.
short, small aura.
Yeah, and we only get fight last against demons, and only if you spend 15 points on the true name shard. And then the only other way is the gyro
Like an
temporal
Inquisitor.
vault or something gives fight first. It's a relic.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I mean, we don't have access to fight last except against demons, which, I mean, I've still never even played a demons player, so.
Yeah, so I think there's some weaknesses of the army, but certainly if you can dominate a flank with those dreadnoughts, that's worked really well for me. And I guess the threat of combat really scares a lot of opponents backwards.
Yeah, well, we're really good in combat for sure. So, all right, man, I will let you go. Thank you again so much. Lots of eye-opening information there, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.